Atai, our family reunion dinner. My father leaned forward, his napkin still folded in one hand. So, Maya, he said evenly, what did you do with the $250,000 I sent you? The table went still. Forks froze. My stepmother's smile faltered. Across the table, my brother Leo's face drained of color. My pulse thudded, but I held his gaze. What money? I asked. Overhead, the chandelier buzzed faintly, the only sound left in the room. I scanned the faces around me, one guilty, one terrified. Then I reached for my phone, opened a folder, and slid it across the table. Dad's eyes widened. He hadn't expected that. What he saw on that screen would change every relationship at that table forever. Just one night earlier, I'd been in my Chicago apartment, surrounded by fabric swatches and open design briefs. My life there was calm, predictable, mine. I'd built it from the ground up. No family help, no favors, just grit. Maybe that's why my father, Richard Calloway, always said I reminded him of himself. He ran a mid-sized architecture firm in Denver, and every phone call ended the same. I'm proud of you, kid. He never said that to Leo. My brother, 3 years older, charming yet reckless, had a history of failed ventures and expensive opportunities. Our mother, Evelyn, always called him my dreamer. I was the steady one, which really meant the cleanup crew, but even the steady one can break when the lies finally reach her doorstep. A week before that dinner, Leo called. His voice was unusually soft, too careful. Hey, Dad's not feeling great. We might cancel the anniversary dinner. Cancel? I frowned. He just texted me about the wine order. He's tired, Maya. I just think it's best you don't come this time. The call ended abruptly, but something didn't sit right. Dad's 65th birthday and 40th anniversary were events he'd been planning for months. He'd never skip without calling me himself. So I phoned him. He answered on the second ring, cheerful as ever. You're still coming, right? Wait till you see what your mom's done. That's when I knew Leo had lied. And when someone like Leo lies, there's always a reason buried beneath the charm. On the flight home, I kept replaying Leo's voice in my head, soft, hesitant, strategic. Maybe he wanted attention. Maybe Mom asked him to avoid conflict. Or maybe there was something bigger at play. When I landed in Denver, the Calloway home looked exactly as it always had. White fences, trimmed hedges, the faint scent of my mother's rose candles wafting from the porch. She greeted me with a flawless smile and a hug that felt rehearsed. Leo appeared behind her, grin stretched too wide. You made it, he said. I smiled back, but there was something in his eyes, nervous, calculating. And for the first time in years, I felt like a stranger in my own family's house. That feeling wasn't paranoia. It was my first warning. The next morning, I woke to the smell of bacon and the faint hum of Mom singing in the kitchen. The house sparkled like a museum, picture frames gleaming, candles perfectly aligned. It wasn't hospitality. It was performance. Dad was cheerful at breakfast, talking about new projects and clients, looking healthy and strong. Nothing like the frail man Leo had described. Across from him, Leo barely touched his food, eyes fixed on his phone. When Dad stepped away to take a call, Mom leaned in. Maya, let's not bring up work or money tonight, okay? Your brother's been under stress. Stress from what? I asked. She hesitated, lips parting, then forced a smile. When someone dodges a simple question, it's because the truth would burn too hot to say aloud. That afternoon, while setting the table for dinner, I heard Leo in the next room, whispering sharply into his phone. No, I said next week. Stop calling me. His tone snapped like a whip. When he noticed me standing in the doorway, his face paled. Business, he said too quickly, sliding his phone into his pocket. You wouldn't get it. Maybe I didn't. But I understood fear, and he was drowning in it. After he left, I noticed a small stack of envelopes on the counter, payment receipts neatly folded. One bore the name of a financial firm I knew well, my father's investment manager, not Leo's. Whatever Leo was tangled in, he'd used Dad's accounts to do it, and that was only the beginning. That evening, as the guests started arriving, I slipped upstairs to my old room. It still smelled faintly of lavender, but the posters were gone, replaced by my mother's new guest suite decor. On my desk, my phone buzzed with a new email notification. It was from my bank. Transfer confirmation, $250,000 completed. My breath hitched. My name was on it. I scrolled again, heart pounding. The funds had come from a joint account, one that hadn't existed in years. The other name? Leo Calloway. My hands went cold. He had used my identity. And if Dad found out, he'd never believe it wasn't me. There was only one thing left to do: find proof before the truth found me first. Sleep was impossible that night. The glow of my phone painted shifting shadows on the ceiling as I scrolled through transaction logs. Small test deposits appeared first, then one massive transfer. Every signature was digital, but the access came from someone inside the family. By sunrise, my pulse had steadied into quiet rage. I walked downstairs. Mom was making coffee, humming again like nothing had happened. "Mom," I said softly, "did you know about this?" She turned, startled, or pretending to be. "Know about what, honey?" I showed her the screen. Her expression cracked for just 1 second. That single flicker of guilt told me everything she'd been trying to hide. "Leo was just in trouble," she said finally, voice trembling. "He promised to return the money before your father noticed. It was supposed to be temporary." My chest tightened. "Before Dad noticed?" "What about before I did?" Her silence was the answer. "You've always been so independent," she murmured. "You wouldn't miss it." I stared at her, speechless. That sentence stung more than betrayal itself. I picked up my phone and walked out before she could say another word. The morning air was sharp and cold as I drove toward the only person I could still trust, Aunt Nora. If anyone in this family ever told the truth, it was her, and I needed her now more than ever. Aunt Nora's diner sat on the edge of town, smelling like coffee and old linoleum, comfort in its simplest form. When I walked in, she didn't even look surprised to see me. "I figured this day would come," she said, sliding a mug across the counter. I told her everything: the transfer, Mom's confession, Leo's lies. Nora listened quietly, then reached under the counter and pulled out a manila folder. "He came here last month bragging about an investment deal," she said. "Paid with crisp $100 bills. I kept the receipts inside were restaurant checks, hotel bills, even jewelry purchases. All within the same week my money vanished. The paper trail was undeniable, but now I had to decide, confront or expose. I sent everything to Caroline Ross, Dad's longtime attorney and my former mentor. Her reply came minutes later. "Maya, this isn't a misunderstanding. It's financial fraud." She told me if Dad believed Leo's story, my reputation and career could be destroyed. "I'm not confronting him yet," I said. "Not until they're all in the same room." Caroline hesitated. "Then you'd better have proof ready." I smiled bitterly. "I already do." That night, I returned to the house. Mom was decorating the dining room, pretending nothing was wrong. Leo poured wine, all charm and denial. I sat at the far end, phone by my plate, the folder ready. By the time dessert was served, every secret in this family would finally come undone. The dinner began beautifully: roast salmon, champagne, polite laughter echoing beneath the chandelier. Dad looked so happy, cheeks flushed, eyes soft. He poured me a glass of wine. "I still can't believe you flew in just for this," he said warmly. I smiled, forcing the words. Wouldn't miss it for the world. Across the table, Leo's leg bounced under his chair, his grin stretched too tight. Every few seconds he'd glance at Mom, who'd give him tiny nods of reassurance. For a moment it almost felt normal. But deep down, I knew. It was the calm before the storm. And then Dad leaned forward with one question that shattered the entire illusion. Dad's voice was calm, almost too calm. "So tell me, Maya," he said, still holding his napkin, "what did you do with the $250,000 I gave you?" Laughter died instantly. Forks froze mid-air. My heart slammed once against my ribs, then went still. "What?" I whispered. He didn't blink. "The transfer. I sent it months ago. Leo said it was for a private project, but now I want to hear it from you." Mom's hand tightened on her glass. Leo's face turned pale. His jaw locked. Everyone stared. It felt like every molecule in that room was waiting for my answer, but I didn't flinch, because the truth was sitting right there at the table with us. The chandelier hummed faintly above, filling the silence. Then Leo laughed too loud, too forced. "Come on, Dad. Maya probably forgot. She's been busy." Dad's eyes snapped to him. "Forgot? 250,000 isn't spare change, Leo." The room tensed. Even Aunt Nora, seated near the corner, had stopped mid-sip, her eyes narrowing. "I never received that money," I said finally, steady but cold. Dad frowned. "I have the confirmation. It's your name, same account you used for your studio fund." My fingers dug into the tablecloth. "Then maybe," I said softly, "you should look closer at who else had access." Mom's face stiffened, and Leo's hands began to shake. The truth was no longer safe in their mouths. Mom reached out nervously. "Richard, not here," she whispered. But Dad shook his head. "Why not? If there's a problem, we'll fix it." Leo set his fork down, the sound sharp in the silence. "Dad, it's not a big deal." I can explain." "Explain what?" I cut in, locking eyes with him. "The transfer you made in my name? Or the hotel bills that followed?" He froze. Dad turned sharply to me. "What are you talking about?" I unlocked my phone, slid it across the table, the folder open and glowing. "Here," I said, "every transaction. Same account, same IP address, Leo's." And in that instant, the entire illusion of family loyalty cracked wide open. Dad scrolled through the screen, color draining from his face. "Leo, you did this?" Leo's voice trembled. "Dad, please, it's not what you think." "I just borrowed it. I was going to pay it back." "Borrowed?" Dad's tone cut like glass. "You forged your sister's access and stole her money." Mom shot up from her chair. "Richard, stop yelling. He made a mistake." "A mistake?" Dad snapped. "Evelyn, you knew?" Her eyes filled with tears. "He was drowning in debt. I thought if Maya never found out, no one would get hurt." I laughed bitterly. "You thought lying to me was helping?" That was the moment I realized. The betrayal wasn't just Leo's, it was hers too. "You signed my name," I said, voice shaking. "You both let him take everything I worked for." Leo stood up, hands trembling. "I was desperate, Maya. I didn't mean to ruin anything. Desperate enough to let Dad accuse me of theft?" The table went silent. No clinking glasses, no murmurs. Just the heavy sound of my father breathing, slow and furious. He turned toward Mom, his voice breaking. "You two planned this." "It was for our family," she whispered. "You wouldn't understand." Dad slammed his hand against the table, plates rattling. "No, Evelyn. Family doesn't steal from each other," and in that silence, I saw it. The moment my father's love turned into something colder than anger. Leo's voice cracked. "Dad, please! We can fix this." Dad exhaled sharply. "You're right. We can." He pulled out his phone, dialing without hesitation. "Richard!" Mom screamed. "Don't do this to him!" He didn't even look at her. "I need to report a theft." $250,000. My son used his sister's identity. Leo sank into his chair, hands covering his face. The chandelier flickered, humming like a warning. Mom sobbed, clinging to him, but Dad didn't flinch. I sat frozen, my pulse steady for the first time that night. The truth was finally louder than the lies. But truth, I was about to learn, doesn't always feel like victory. It feels like loss. 30 minutes later, the police arrived. Their flashlights cut through the dining room's glass, red and blue lights washing over the walls. Leo didn't resist when they asked him to stand. Mom clung to his arm, begging, but he wouldn't meet her eyes. Dad signed the statement in silence. When he finally looked at me, there was no pride, just heartbreak. "Maya," he said quietly, "I'm sorry." I shook my head. "You believed them. You had every reason to." He reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "You asked what I did with your money," I said softly. "I protected it. From them." And as the sirens faded, I realized no apology could ever rebuild what broke that night. The door shut behind the officers, leaving only silence and the faint hum of the chandelier. Aunt Nora placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "You did the right thing," she whispered. I looked down at the folder still glowing on the table. "Maybe," I said. "But it doesn't feel like it." Dad slumped into his chair, rubbing his temples. "I raised them both," he muttered. "How did we end up here?" There was no answer to give. The house felt smaller now, like the walls themselves had heard too much truth to ever echo laughter again, and though the night was over, the real reckoning had only just begun. The weeks that followed felt unreal, like walking through the ashes of a house still warm from the fire. Denver grew quiet. The headlines faded, but the whispers didn't. Leo's name appeared in court documents and in pitying conversations my mother could no longer control. Dad handled everything through Caroline Ross, his lawyer. The charges were official: identity fraud, unauthorized transfer of funds. Leo avoided prison with a plea deal, but restitution was strict: pay back every cent or lose everything. Mom stood beside him at every hearing, her once perfect poise gone. But the woman who'd once defended her son at all costs was about to lose far more than his freedom. When it was all over, Dad called me into his office. The desk where he once drew blueprints was now buried under legal papers. "I've rewritten my will," he said quietly. "The firm, the house, everything. It's yours." "They'll get nothing," I wanted to protest, but the words caught in my throat. This wasn't revenge. It was regret in legal form. He looked older than I'd ever seen him, the weight of betrayal etched into every line of his face. All I could do was nod. Maybe this was his way of saying sorry. But even justice signed on paper can't erase the guilt carved into blood. By the end of the month, Leo sold everything: his car, his watches, even the designer furniture Mom had once bragged about. They moved into a small rented duplex on the outskirts of the city. I heard about it from Aunt Nora, not from them. Silence had replaced the chaos, but it wasn't peace. It was punishment. For the first time in her life, Mom looked worn, her hair unkempt, her eyes hollow. She still called occasionally, but I never answered. Some wounds don't need conversations, they just need distance. And though they were still breathing, our family, at least the version I knew, was gone. When I finally returned to Chicago, the city felt different. The air was cleaner, sharper, like it belonged entirely to me now. Dad helped me pack before I left, standing quietly beside the car. Before I got in, he handed me an envelope. Inside was a single check, $800,000. "The amount I once meant for your future," he said. "You deserve your clean start." Tears blurred the driveway as I hugged him goodbye. As I drove north, the skyline faded in my rearview mirror. What replaced it wasn't peace, just clarity. But clarity, I'd soon learn, is the first step toward rebuilding from ashes. 6 months later, I stood in front of a glass storefront in downtown Chicago. The new sign above the door read, "Harborline Atelier, my boutique." Inside, morning light spilled across rows of tailored coats, silk scarves, and hand-stitched bags. Every price tag carried my initials, proof that I had built this world myself, one stitch at a time. The $800,000 my father gave me had become more than a business. It was redemption wrapped in fabric and sweat. As customers wandered in, I felt something unfamiliar. Not pride, not relief, freedom. But even freedom carries echoes of the past. You just have to choose whether to listen. Dad visits sometimes, carrying 2 coffees and that quiet half-smile I grew up chasing. He walks the aisles, touching the fabrics like he's reading a story written in thread. You did this, he says softly. And for the first time, I believe him. He doesn't talk about Mom or Leo anymore, and I don't ask. Some subjects are too bruised to touch. Still, there's warmth between us again. A fragile kind that rebuilds slowly, day by day. He says the store feels like closure. Maybe it is. But closure isn't the same as forgetting, and ghosts have a way of knocking when you least expect them. Months passed without a single call from Mom or Leo. Their restitution payments came in slowly, small mechanical transactions that arrived like monthly reminders of what greed costs. I didn't cash them. Each transfer sat in a separate account labeled past. Sometimes late at night I'd scroll through those records and feel nothing. Not anger, not sadness, just distance. The kind that comes when you finally stop trying to fix people who broke themselves. Outside, the city lights shimmered against the shop windows, soft and cold. But the one night I decided to close early, I found something waiting that made my heart stop. It was a gray Thursday when I decided to close early. As I reached for the lights, I saw an envelope slipped under the glass door. No name, just my initials scrawled across the front. Inside was a folded note and a check, $5,000. The handwriting was unmistakable. Leo. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I don't expect forgiveness. I sat behind the counter for a long time, staring at it. Part of me wanted to tear it apart. Another part wanted to believe he meant it. In the end, I tucked it away in the same account labeled past. Because forgiveness isn't something you give. It's something you grow into. Slow. Weeks later, Dad and Aunt Nora came to visit the store together. They stood by the front window, watching customers browse. "It's beautiful," Aunt Nora said. "Looks like peace finally found you." I smiled faintly. Peace didn't find me. I built it. Dad slipped an arm around my shoulder, pride softening his voice. "You remind me of your mother, back when she still believed honesty could fix things." That sentence lingered. For the first time, I didn't feel bitterness. Just quiet understanding. We'd all been broken by the same storm, just in different ways. And in that moment, I realized healing doesn't come from winning. It comes from surviving together. That night, I locked up the boutique and stood under the streetlight, watching the reflection of my sign in the glass, Harborline Atelier. The hum of traffic filled the silence, the same kind of hum